about, like, but here's the thing. I didn't feel like I could go to church and say, hey, you guys, I'm pregnant. Like, no one even knew I was pregnant until, like, 2 weeks before.
Hey,
Christina.
Hey. Hi, guys.
How's it going?
What's going on?
Good. Okay. So before I talk about what I wanted to talk about, I actually want to touch on the conviction thing, because this is something that I struggled with for a long time. So I spent a lot of time praying about it. So as concise as possible, conviction, is different than condemnation in that when you are condemned, you are one with your sin, right? Like, it's all you can do. You're helpless from it. But conviction comes from a place of, I am not my sin. I'm a child of God. And sin is something that can be cleansed from you. So when you're condemned, you feel hopeless. You feel despair because, Jesus didn't come to condemn the world. The world's already condemned, right? So people who don't have Jesus are like, well, I can't get rid of all this sin. Like, it's who I am. I was born this way. And yes, you were. We were all born in sin. And so when you're condemned, you're one with your sin. But when you're convicted and you're in Christ, you're one with Christ and you have his righteousness. And so when you sin, you're like, oh, this is not who I am. This is ugly. Like, God, clean this. I'm sorry. Right. And so there's a differentiation there. One leaves you humbled and hopeful. The other one leaves you defeated. Right. So, for what it's worth, but
Yeah.
that is not why I wanted to come on, but I was like, perfect timing. So the conversation you guys were just having is a perfect segue, because 9 years ago, right after I gave my life to Jesus, I literally got baptized on August 31st and found out I was pregnant on September 15th. And I was like, oh no one is going to take me serious in my walk with Christ. I was like, now here I am. And one of the things I was praying for was help to be abstinent, right? To not be doing that anymore. And then I ended up pregnant. And so I immediately was like, no one is going to take me serious in my walk. Like, this is so shameful. No one's going to accept me. Like, I was just baptized. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I literally started praying and asking God, like, how he saw abortion, because I thought that was my only option. And I was like, I don't know. I prayed about it for like a week. And then I had this dream. And in the dream, there was this line of people lined up with their kids of like all these different ages. And I was like screaming at them, like, what are you doing? Because they were lining them up to have their limbs tied and pulled apart. And it wasn't like gory in my dream. It like looked like stuffing and chicken breasts when it came apart. But like, that's how I was like, I know this is God, because God wouldn't give me some like gruesome dream. But like, they were all different ages. And when I woke up, it was just clear as day. It doesn't matter if you're 10 weeks pregnant or they're 10 years old. It's the same thing. And so then immediately, complete transparency for you all, I started to ask God to take my baby, because I still thought my only option was, and I was already a single mom. Okay. Like I had a son but I was like, I'm going to do things right now. Right. Like, that's what I wanted. And I asked God to take my baby. And then on December 3rd, 6:15 a.m., I woke up and I passed like this huge blood clot, and I thought that I lost my child. And immediately I just broke down and I started begging God, like, please, right? And I just remember getting to the hospital and I'm just praying. I'm like, please let there be a heartbeat. And they were like, there's a heartbeat and there's a 50% chance that you're going to lose this child. And I was 14 weeks along and I continued to bleed. And every time I bled, it was like, there's more and more a chance of losing your child. It got to the point where at 20 weeks, like I was losing a lot of blood, and they were going to hospitalize me for my own safety at that point. And I remember having this doctor come in the room, and my son was 5 at the time. And this doctor described how he was going to remove my baby from me piece by piece to save my life. And I was like, no, Like, you're not. And I had like this whole NICU team came in and they were like, well, how far do you want us to go to try and like save this baby? I'm like, everything that, like, what do you mean? Like, what I didn't really recognize how endangered my life was, right? And there's so many times people say, well, it's healthcare and like for medical reasons, you know, realistically, it's only like 2% of the time that abortions are non-essential, or that are only 2% are considered like essential. I mean, non-elective. And this would have been a non-elective abortion. But God weeded that out of me. Like, I laid in this hospital bed for an entire month, bleeding and hemorrhaging and having them stop my labor multiple times. And then almost dying, and my baby being born 1 pound, 15 ounces with a hole in her heart and bleeding on her brain and all of these things. And it was a huge struggle, right? 87 days in the NICU and all of that. But that little girl, like, I can't imagine my life without her. And I'm still a single mom, and now I'm waiting for marriage, right? Like, God weeded a lot out of me. But she is the most incredible little girl I have ever met. And she has completely transformed my life. And when I think about, like, here's the thing. I didn't feel like I could go to church and say, hey, you guys, I'm pregnant. Like, no one even knew I was pregnant until, like, 2 weeks before I had her. Like, I hid it. And I was in the hospital alone, bleeding, not sure if I was going to live or die, because I felt like the church was not going to accept me because they weren't going to take me serious in my walk. And I think that is a huge issue with why women in the church are having abortions, because they think that it's easier to just do that and move on with their lives. And I can say that because I was there. I thought that was the best option, but like that dream, I couldn't shake it. Like, there's no way I could shake it. And I thank God every day that he changed my heart on that, you know? Like, he took me, like, I was asking him to take my daughter, and he got me into a position where I was willing to lay my entire life down for her instead. And I don't know, I guess I just want to encourage anybody who's had an abortion or been in that place to know, like, it's not over. God's not done. You know, he can transform anything, whether you went through with an abortion or not, whether you're a single mom or not, right? Like, I'm officially like a college graduate. I still have more time to go, but like, things have changed. Like, I mean, my life was crap. Like, my life, I was in foster care. My mom, yeah. Anyways, just today, like, I found out, like, she's going to serve jail time for her addiction and theft and stuff like that. Like, that's still my reality. But I have such a strong relationship with God and with my children, right? That, like, I don't know where I would be without them. I don't know where I'd be without that little girl, you know? And thank you for what you're doing. These conversations have to happen. And there needs to be more hope, and there needs to be open communication in the church, and there needs to be options, right? I didn't have support, but God made it happen, you know, and he can. And so I just wanted to share some of my story because I can relate across the board, you know. Yeah,
That is
wow. Wow.
yeah.
That's an amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys, when I say this little girl, like, her name is Faith, and
Her name is what?
rightfully so, Faith.
Oh, I thought you said Faith.
Faith. No, no.
Oh,
Doesn't have
okay.
a fake
Faith.
name. No,
Oh, okay.
it's Faith.
Okay.
And I literally have gone to her parent teacher conferences where her teachers are like tearing up talking about how compassionate she is and how she's like she's the girl in the class that comes alongside those kids with the special needs and helps them and like befriends these children that are severely autistic, and like that's just who she is. You know, like what would this world be without her, right? Like, and how many of these babies, like, does God have a plan for? You know,
Right.
I'm not saying that to shame anyone, just like that's the reality of it. These are children, 10 weeks, 10 years, doesn't matter. And they are children that will grow into adults and that have a purpose and a place in this world. We can sit here all day long and try and decide what we think their life would be if they were born, and it's unfair. We can't do that. We have no way of knowing, and it's better to live and suffer and struggle and overcome than it is to not live at all.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think your story is just like the ultimate testament of like God just taking care of you and your children, right?
yeah,
Because in the end, yeah, it's your child, but it really belongs to God, right?
right.
And so if it's being conceived, it's going to be born, God's going to take care of it in the end, right?
Yeah.
So I think that your story is just like a great testament to that.
That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I was trying to hold back my tears the whole time because I just wanted to cry because I respect so much you being willing to share that so publicly because I know that's hard. And I just think it's incredible how much faith God has so obviously built in you through that experience and being able to use that experience to speak to other people, right? That's like, I don't know if you were on the beginning of the live, I was sharing my story about my unplanned pregnancy when I was a worship major at college. So like,
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I had unplanned pregnancy at 18 when I was studying worship music at a Christian university. So I get it. I get where you're coming
But we're
from.
here.
What I can't speak to, what I haven't experienced, is the medical diagnosis, because that's a really big piece. I hear that a lot, and I have answers, to people when they bring up these situations. But you have been placed in such a unique spot to have personal experience to say, hey, I was actually given a diagnosis where I was told I should have an abortion, and here I am. And I think that's so powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad to share. When I saw the topic today, I was like, okay, you guys, I'm gonna stick this one out and come jump on before I go to bed. But
we appreciate you for sharing that, because that was an amazing testimony and an amazing story. And I think that there are some things that kind of have been echoed from other people as well. Other people that spoke not from their personal experience, from what they've said. Like, I feel like in the church they would not be accepted, or they would feel this, or they would feel that. Obviously, as a church, we should try to be as open and loving as possible, right? But even if I don't want people to think that if that feeling is there, it's because the church isn't accepting, because we all have that inclination to be that way. In Genesis 3, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit and they heard God coming into the garden, what did they do? They hid. And God never gave them a reason to hide. And so we naturally are inclined to want to do that. And then once we do that, we listen to the enemy telling us these things and all these other kinds of things. So even when we were kids, even if we knew we were sick, we didn't want to, well, I didn't want to go to the doctor. I don't know about you guys, but I never wanted to go to the doctor, even if I knew it would make me better, because I felt like, what if something happens, like they give me a shot? I don't want a shot. I'll just deal with the sickness, even though it may like kill me or something. And so, but anyway, all that to say, I'm glad that you God still reached you even when you didn't go back in the church and have the community. He still reached down and spoke to you on his own. So that's really great.
absolutely. And I understand exactly what you're saying. And there is a big part of that is that shame and the enemy lying to us. I was already convicted about premarital sex before I got pregnant, right? Like before I knew I was pregnant. Can you guys hear me? It's very echoey for me.
I'm just muting my mic when you guys are talking so that it won't echo. If you guys want to do that.
Oh, okay. So I already had that conviction, but it's different when people can see it, right? Like if you're pregnant, they can see that, like, oh, she, but I will say that church can be so geared towards the two-parent, picture perfect, never gone through a single thing in your life, grew up in church type family, that in and of itself can make someone who's been through something, regardless of whether they're a single parent or not, it can make you feel like, oh, this isn't really a place for me. Like, I know God loves me, I have my relationship with him, but at this church, I don't feel seen or heard, because the sermon is always like talking about the husband, how he needs to be to the wife, or how the wife is to be to the husband, or talking about like just in these two-parent dynamics. They don't necessarily, and this is not all churches by any means, but they don't really go into, those who were addicted to drugs, those who, were in foster care, or like myself, like I'm a survivor of human trafficking. Like, I've been through a lot of things. And so I think with me and a lot of people who have a testimony, right, and we all have testimonies, so don't take that wrong, but that it can feel very much like our experiences or mistakes aren't really accepted at church, because, the feeling sometimes is that everyone has it together at church. And I'm blessed and fortunate enough to be going to a church where people are real and authentic, and they talk about hard topics. And I just want like every church to be like that, because that's what the body of Christ is supposed to look like. But also the church I go to, they literally have 3 slots for single mother parking. So like they very much are like, hey, we see you and you're welcome here. I look forward to there being more of that,
I think over communication from churches is such a big thing, because the other side of the coin too is that the reality is there's not very many churches that I know where people would walk in as a single pregnant woman or as a single unwed mother and walk into a church and have people pull her to the side and be like, you can't be here. Like, churches don't do that. Like, that's not a thing. But
right.
I think more this conversation is kind of surrounding how much is it talked about and how much are we making it clear to people, because when women are in these situations where they are in crisis mode, even if they're in a very supportive church, if the church isn't very outspoken about being supportive of people in the different situations they're in, it can be really easy to go to worst case scenario. Like when I was pregnant in college, my brain went to, I'm getting kicked out of the house, I'm getting kicked out of school, I'm going to be a school dropout, I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to have nothing, I'm going to get strung out on drugs. Like, none of that was probably reality, but because I was in this crisis situation, my brain went to a worst case scenario and treated it like it was reality. So when, as a church, we have these open conversations ahead of time, like before people get in these situations of, hey, no matter what happens, we're here for you. And even if this thing takes place and, we don't want you to get into the situation, but even if you do, we're still going to be here for you, making that clear across the board helps people when they are in that crisis situation to think, okay, I know it feels like it's the end of the world, but I remember they told me that I could go to them, so I know I can go to them.
Right.